Thank you guys for tuning into another exciting video today. This video is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be talking about some old news, or rather, new news about old news. These are going to be some stories and topics that have fallen out of the limelight that I think are really important that we should just go back and review, see what's interesting, because I think a lot of people know what's going on. So we're going to be talking about Ahmaud Arbery 1 year later, Ghislaine Maxwell getting out of jail, Democratic presidential hopeful Tulsi Gabbard, what she's doing now and what's next, and a little bit more information about the Tennessee bombing. I'm Anthony, and this is Allow Me to Retort. Thank you guys for tuning into another exciting video. Don't forget to leave a comment down below if you like what you're seeing, or if you hate what you're seeing. Give me a subscribe, ring that bell, because I don't upload videos often, or at least not on a regular scheduled basis. So you want to be subscribed with the bell on so you get notified in your inbox or vibration on your phone or whatever. So that way you know when I know, and everybody's happy. We're all in the know. Anyway, let's just get into some of our stories here today. The first thing I want to talk about is Ahmaud Arbery, or Ahmaud Aubry. If some of you forgotten and you've been living under a rock, a year ago, Ahmaud Arbery was jogging through a neighborhood when two men chased him down. A third followed in a car, apparently, or appeared later in a car, apparently, and a struggle ensued, and Arbery was shot. It turns out, as more information developed, that Ahmaud Arbery was suspected. He has been on camera several times entering this premises at night in a neighborhood. There was a home that was being renovated, and they have footage that seems to now be confirmed that it was Arbery entering that house and looking around, although on camera he never takes anything. Previous to these camera videos, though, there were items stolen from the house, but the owner of the house himself says he doesn't know who stole them. But he did make a call to other members of the neighborhood to ask them to look out for his property. Obviously, neighborhoods talk, so word got to some neighbors down the street, the McMichaels. There's a father and a son, and they were also on high alert, watching out for the property and watching out for suspicious activity in the neighborhood where previous items had been stolen. So when call got out that Arbery was jogging through the neighborhood and had entered the house in question that had had several things taken from it in the past, they pursued him, believing that he may be the criminal who has been stealing things and terrorizing their neighborhood. Now that street justice has been served, we'll never really know the truth of Arbery's intentions, whether or not he was the previous thief, whether or not he was really just jogging. We'll never know that. But what we do know is that the two men and the third who followed them in the car are all on trial for murder, and Arbery's mother is on the warpath. So I have here this article from News for Jax. I guess that's News for Jacksonville. 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery was killed February 23rd, 2020, in the small neighborhood. He was apparently jogging, and these men chased him, believing that he may be the potential burglar. And obviously, a struggle ensued, and Arbery lost his life fighting over a gun when he approached the younger McMichael's son and fought him in a fist fight, or he fought him and struggled over the gun. He ended up getting shot 3 times, once in the hand and twice in the chest. Arbery's mother is now suing the law enforcement agency that investigated it, saying that they conspired with the McMichaels to ignore her son's murder. They wanted to let them get away with it. She's got a theory that they were conspiring against her. She's got a conspiracy theory. Arbery's mother is suing for $1 million, and she did this hours before the march for his memory commenced, which the timing seems impeccable to me. Now this is my channel. I'm going to give you my opinion from time to time, but if she felt that her family was wronged, it just feels very weird that exactly 1 year on the day that you're trying to, you're stomping ground, you're getting his name put back up there, you're getting media attention again, is also the time that you release that you're suing for $1 million, and such a high number. Don't get me wrong, life is priceless, but I'm just wondering why she thinks she's entitled to $1 million, especially when we don't really know all the full story here. We don't know whether her son was innocent or not. It's just very interesting that she's come up with that number, and the timing to me, the fact that she had just got done filing that suit. I think it was 24 hours before that they went out and had a memorial service where they marched through that very neighborhood where he was killed. Some people also went to a church. The nation addressed it. Joe Biden decided to send his condolences via a tweet. So it's just interesting that when all of a sudden his name is back popular again, is the very day that she decides that she's going to pull the trigger on a lawsuit asking for this absorbent amount of money. The McMichaels, Travis and Gregory McMichael, are both on trial awaiting murder, along with, what is his name, William Bryan. William Bryan is the guy who was apparently called and was recording over his phone the whole time. He did nothing. William Bryan is a very interesting character. To be honest, the McMichaels seemed that they had been honest from the beginning. They told what they thought was happening and they gave everything to the cops. Mr. Bryan, however, his story has changed several times depending on who's interviewing and it's depending on how much trouble he's in. At first, he wasn't involved at all. He had no idea what was going on. He hadn't been called. He just showed up and was happy to record. But then when the McMichaels said, hey, no, yeah, William, he got it all. He was there for us. He'll show you the video. Then he was like, wait a minute, maybe I do know these guys, but I'm not like them. They're racist. They called him the N-word. And that's exactly what Mr. Bryan is doing now. When he was being interviewed, he's given testimony that they used the N-word, a slur, and now he's also saying that they hit him with the truck before he was shot to death. So Mr. Bryan obviously isn't one to be trusted. His story's changed several times already, and now he's claiming that, first he was claiming, I don't know these guys, I just showed up. Well, it turns out they know you by name, buddy. They said they called you. They said you came here to be part of this. So yeah, you do know these people. And then you're going to say that, well, okay, maybe I do know them, but they're racist. I'm not. They called that guy the N-word. I would never. Very interesting to see how people act when their skin is on the line, whether they are found innocent or guilty. Mr. Bryan should definitely suffer something for his flip-flopping of his story, his lying, and his skin saving. Nothing worse than a sneaky snake. I don't think he can be trusted in any circumstances by anyone, not by law enforcement, not by the McMichaels, not by his neighborhood people, not by Aubrey's mother. No one should be able to trust this man whose story changes depending on the way the wind blows. And in some other news, Ghislaine Maxwell, I'm sure you guys know who she is. Maybe not because he hasn't been talked about nearly as much, but Jeffrey Epstein is someone who you probably know of. He's the billionaire who is accused of having a pedophile island where he had several children and people flown out to him where they would have these disgusting, gross parties, and they would do all kind of nasty, disgusting, demoralizing things with kids, underage people. And Ghislaine Maxwell is the person who was basically his secretary. She helped orchestrate all this. She helped gather celebrities. She helped gather young people from all across the globe and bring them to Jeffrey Epstein. Well, Jeffrey Epstein obviously suicided himself. He died in prison somehow, and so now we'll never know exactly what's going on with him. He'll never get justice. But she apparently knows all, and she is going to be telling all, and she's taking her sweet time doing it. This is the third time she's applied to get out on bail, which seems stupid and pointless to me. But this time she's offering up her foreign citizenship. She's going to renounce her foreign citizenship, and she's going to surrender her passports, meaning that she will not be able to flee the country, which honestly seems pointless to me. But one reason why I'm talking about Miss Maxwell is that she's also come out and apparently admitted, or actually previously she came out and admitted that there were tapes of both Bill Clinton and Donald Trump in existence. Let's talk about that. The Independent writes, Ghislaine Maxwell told a reporter that Epstein had tapes of Trump and Clinton. Now, that's not exactly what she said. She was being interviewed by Ira Rosen. He's an ex-producer for the 60-Minute show. He was asking her a line of questioning back in 2016 about Jeffrey Epstein and all the things that he's done, because at this time Jeffrey Epstein was being investigated and looked into for his acts that everyone knew about, and she was still out and free. Mr. Rosen apparently told Miss Maxwell, I want the tapes. I know he was taping everyone. Miss Maxwell was said to have looked stern, pointed a finger at Mr. Rosen, who theorized that Epstein had secretly recorded everyone who visited his properties in Florida and New York in the 1990s, which included the former presidents, and the suspected locations of where they carried out the crimes. Ms. Maxwell apparently told Rosen, "I'm the daughter of a press baron. I know the way you people think. If you do one side, you must do the other. If you get the Trump tapes, you have to do Clinton." So apparently, she is right then admitting that there are apparently Trump tapes and that there are Clinton tapes that she knows of. She then later on says she couldn't tell him the whereabouts because she doesn't even know where they are. Again, alluding to the fact that these tapes do exist. This isn't coming from her mouth. This is coming from this Ira Rosen guy. He said on this super crucial information that apparently former president and a current president were both involved in this sexual trafficking, disgusting sex ring thing, and he didn't tell anybody about it. Well, that's because it's all baloney, I believe. 100%. What I do believe and what we do know is that over 20 something, over 30 something times was Bill Clinton on his plane, the Lolita Express. A lot of those itineraries are incomplete, meaning we don't know where he went, but apparently he never went to the island. But we know that he flew on that plane several times. I believe Trump isn't on the itinerary once. He's never been on the Lolita Express. So for some reason, whenever they bring up Bill Clinton and whenever they bring up all this stuff, they try to throw Trump in there and try to lump him in with it. So instead of getting it directly from her, we're getting it from this second source who's saying, yeah, there were definitely Trump tapes and there's also Clinton tapes. But the only reason she didn't want to release them is because she didn't want to hurt Clinton's presidential run. And apparently after the election, she was going to tell us all about the tapes. That never happened, apparently. Obviously, the election went out. Clinton lost. It would have been the perfect time if she was really such a big Clinton fan, a Clinton supporter, and that this evidence really did exist of Donald Trump. Where is it? How did the Justice Department, how did America sit and let Donald Trump be president of the United States for 4 years if these tapes did indeed exist? Well, that's because they didn't. They don't. You will not find any tapes. I'm 100% sure of that because the Democrats obviously hate Donald Trump with all of their might, every fiber in their being. So if these tapes existed, you can guarantee they'd be front and center for everybody to know about. He'd be busted. Anytime I get a chance to talk about Tulsi Gabbard, I do it. Tulsi Gabbard was a Democratic nominee, presidential hopeful. She was very good, very bright. I agree with a lot of the things that she says. Except for, the universal healthcare or healthcare for all thing. We do need to look into that. And necessarily, I don't think everybody being taken care of is necessarily a bad thing. But it is very important that it is implemented correctly. I don't want anybody to have to die. I don't want anybody to have money be the reason that they can't get a certain amount of care, that they can't get the best care possible. But what I do not want is someone reaching into other people's pockets, my pockets, without my permission to take care of someone else. Charity needs to be done charitably. It needs to be done freely. It needs to be done openly and voluntarily. That's the definition of true charity. And we do need charity in society. We don't need the government coming in and regulating everything. So I'm all for it. It's all about implementation. But either way, other than that, look into Tulsi Gabbard. I'll help put a link to her website down below so you can read about her. She's a great woman. She served in our military. She voluntarily served to go to Iraq. She was actually getting ready to be another seat in Congress. She was actually up for nomination again, and it was going to be an easy win for her, and she sacrificed that to go serve this country. One of the jobs that I found out she did when she was over there in Iraq is that she was in charge of documenting all the people who were injured, all the casualties, all the deaths. She had to document that and take note and know if somebody from her unit was hurt. She had to be in charge of making sure that they were properly cared for, or if they were dead, she had to be the one in charge of making sure their families were informed. So one of the things about Tulsi is that she understands, and she even says it on her website, she understands the cost of war. She saw the names, she saw and read the injuries and the descriptions of the injuries and the deaths, and she had to note it every single day. That was one of her many tasks that she did while she was over there in Iraq. And she's come out of it knowing and understanding fully that war is disgusting and horrible and terrible, and it's not something that we should take lightly. What I do like about her is that she did not come out hating war, and saying that war is never necessary. But what she did come out and say is that when we do go to war, it doesn't need to be frivolous. It needs to be something with a very specific goal, a very specific target, and we need to send our troops over there so they can do their business and get out and come back home quickly. And that is something that I am all for. I think Tulsi's done amazing at serving in our country. I do believe that she would have made a great president, despite the fact that she's a Democrat. I know it's crazy. I think she would have been a great president. I think she deserved it much more than what we currently have right now. And I would dare to say she would have even been a better president than Donald Trump. I dare to say it. But either way, it didn't happen. Who knows what's next for Tulsi? She hasn't talked. She did back down from her opportunity to run again and become a congresswoman again. She stepped down, which is crazy because we really needed her there. But now she's on the ground in Hawaii doing things, trying to make legislation better there. She also pushed for a lot of legislation before she headed out of Congress. A lot of things were slapped down, but her voice was heard, and there has been ripples. There have been other Republican congressmen and congresswomen who are also pushing the same type of bills that Tulsi was pushing before she left out. So I think she did go out on a high note. Tulsi's been making the rounds on several conservative talk places. She's been on Fox. She's been on Louder with Crowder. She's been interviewed in several other places. You know, she's talked with Ben Shapiro and the Rubin Report, all these kind of different things. She's been out there. And most recently, she has ripped into Nancy Pelosi, who was part of the committee that banned a new congresswoman from having her son be president when she was sworn in. Following a close race in New York's 22nd District, the state Supreme Court ruled that last week, Claudia Tenney was the winner of the 2020 congressional race by 109 votes, pushing her swearing-in ceremony to Thursday. Tenney had requested that her son, a graduate of the Naval Academy and an active-duty Marine, be present for her ceremony, but her request was denied. Tulsi tweeted this: "Is it petty partisanship, vengeance, or a more vilification of our troops? This is not the kind of leadership that will unite our country. It is a slap in the face of all of our service members, including Trey Cleary, who put their lives on the line for our country." So that's Tulsi retweeting Fox's report that Congresswoman claimed that Pelosi stopped her Naval Academy son from being present. Pelosi cited coronavirus issues, awareness, but let's be honest, if this was a Democratic nominee, you do know that some strings would have been pulled. We've seen it all over TV. I've seen it here locally in my own town, that when Democrats want to get something done, it doesn't matter how far they stand apart. It doesn't matter how many of them are in a tiny room or anything. They can hold hands, make out, sing Kumbaya. It's all good. But as soon as you get some other people on the other side of the aisle trying to do the same thing, 6 feet apart, no more than 10 people in the same room, etc., we got to be careful. Slow to spread, flatten the curve. So this is Tulsi Gabbard calling that out and asking, is this partisanship, or is this just, again, Pelosi trying to vilify our troops? And once again, like I said, I like Tulsi because she doesn't apologize for our troops doing what troops do and serving and trying to protect us. Tulsi is not anti-war. She's anti-useless war, and I think that's something that we can all get behind. And my last update for you guys is talking more about the Nashville bombing. There's a committee. They're offering an update today for once on the 22nd. This was actually a few days behind, but on the 22nd, the Nashville had put together a committee of 10 people, city representatives and some state representatives as well, law enforcement and investigators alike, to figure out what happened that day, what went good, what went bad, what they can do next. They have announced that they have interviewed 2 very important people, people that I've mentioned previously if you saw my last videos on it. They've interviewed Anthony Warner's girlfriend, and they've interviewed Anthony Warner's lawyer. 2 people who are not shy about saying that he knew something about bombs. If you remember my first video about the Nashville bombing, Anthony Warner's girlfriend back in 2019 called the cops. It was like a domestic dispute argument, and she ended up sitting outside. She was outside with a loaded gun on the porch. She was telling cops that he was capable of making bombs. He was talking about making bombs and that they should look into him. She was actually checked into a mental facility to get help because they thought there was something wrong with her. The cops did knock on the door to speak to Anthony. They did not get anything. They could see the RV, the same RV that was exploded to pieces on Christmas Eve. They saw that over the fence in his backyard, but for legal reasons, they were not allowed to enter and look into it. Also, Anthony's lawyer, who claims that he knew nothing about this, what was going on, he does come out and say that Warner was talking about, and he was very capable of making bombs. They say he's a very smart man, and that he had done his research, and that if anybody could do it, he could have done it. And that's pretty much all the information the council has given us. They've come out and say that we made a mistake, essentially, not them per se, but that what should they have done, because he was on the radar. He had been tipped off about by someone who was very adamant that he was making bombs and that he was a dangerous person. They had been tipped off in 2019 about this guy, 1 year before he actually went off, or more than a year before he actually went off and blew some stuff up. And his lawyer apparently even says that, hey, yeah, I knew he would be capable of the stuff, but he said nothing. Now, this is both good and bad. I'll tell you why I think it's good and bad. It's good that they're looking to see what they can do to prevent this kind of thing from happening again. It's good that they're admitting that they dropped the ball and that they need to go back, and that that woman should have been heard. They should have listened to her a little bit more. They should have tried a little bit harder. They could have, luckily no lives were lost in this one besides his own, but they could have, saved a lot of property. And in this case, no lives being lost, but there's several other instances where maybe something like this could happen, and dozens, hundreds may have ended up dead. They're just lucky that this is not one of those such cases. The bad part about this is reasons that they could not enter his house is because, illegal search and seizure. He was protected by our Constitution. He was protected by some laws that aren't necessarily bad laws. You don't want a crazy ex-girlfriend coming into the cops and saying, hey, he's making bombs, and then them kicking down your entire door, ripping through your entire house, ripping down your drywall, flipping your car upside down, searching for explosives. But from the way that these committees are talking, looking at where they went wrong and how they could have reacted instead of, knocking on the door, it seems like we may be getting some policy, if not just in Tennessee, maybe nationally, that allows more of our rights to be stripped away from us. And it's very unfortunate when something horrible, some tragedy like this happens, because you want to advocate for justice, you want to say the right thing should happen, but you don't want to lose any more rights. And that looks like where we're headed. I'm very worried, and I'm very interested to see what comes out of Tennessee. What laws are they going to pass to help them further investigate and help them further prevent more situations like this, and who are these laws going to hurt, and how will they be used against the American people? More on Tennessee. AT&T has provided no explanation as to why the 911 communications went down. Now, this may seem pretty obvious to people like you and me. Well, if 911 servers or 911 relays were based in that building, and then Anthony Warner went and blew that building up, then of course the servers and of course the relays all went down. But here's the problem. Part of their contract is that they're supposed to have redundancy built into these type of systems. Everyone apparently on the city council and everybody who is involved in this 911 emergency service stuff was under the impression that if anything horrible like this ever happened, that the next closest server would just pick up all the slack, things would be rerouted. Instead, everything went black for days after this bombing had happened, and AT&T has had no explanation as to what they did wrong. Why didn't these things get rerouted like they were supposed to automatically? Why was there no redundancy built in the system? Because of course, yes, this explosion was a horrible thing, but on top of the 911 calls for that, you still got a whole town where people are maybe having murders or burglaries or robberies and car accidents. People were unable to get to 911 because of this explosion that happened, and people have anticipated this kind of thing like that, and AT&T was supposed to have redundancy built in, and they failed to have that redundancy. So there's a separate investigation going on as to why that did not happen. But those are all my updates for you guys today. Again, we brought up Ahmad Arbery, and his mom's trying to sue the pants off of everybody who's involved. $1 million is what she's asking today. Ghislaine Maxwell is pleading again to get out of jail, trying to offer up her foreign citizenship so that she can get out of jail and go back home. Tulsi Gabbard and just what she's doing and where she's at, and why I think a lot of people, you should look into her some more, see if she's somebody you can get behind, because first of all, I don't think we can wait 4 years to get a good butt in that seat. But if we do have to wait 4 years, hopefully Tulsi's got some fire behind her, or another good good Republican steps up and we can have somebody who we can vote for. And lastly, the Tennessee bombing. I'm going to be following the story. It does sound like, from what I'm reading, is that they've kind of given up on figuring out exactly, if there was any more people involved or anything like that. It seems like they've narrowed it down to that this was a lone bomber, apparently. I know in my last video I mentioned that they're looking for his testing grounds, because apparently an explosion like this is not easy, and he had to have done it more than once in order to get it right. All very interesting stories. What do you think of this video like this? Do you think I should follow up on more old stories, or do you want me to keep it with the new and fresh stuff? Thank you guys for tuning in, leaving a comment down below, and not forgetting to ring that bell. I'm Anthony, and this is Allow Me to Retort.